Hello, my name is Trystan and I am the Wizard of the Wide Brim. Welcome to my first ever video on my brand new channel. I'm very excited to get started and also a little nervous. So bear with me here. This is my first foray into video and audio editing on this level. So I'm going to be figuring things out as I go. So please just bear with me here. But before we get into what this channel is going to be about, let me introduce a little bit more about myself. Like I said, my name is Trystan. I am non-binary with preferred nouns being they, them, but he, him is okay because I do kind of look like a guy, so I'm not offended if you call me he or him. I'm pretty sure I have ADHD. It's not diagnosed, but I have a very erratic brain and tend to ramble a lot, so if my videos tend to run a little long or I get off on tangents, that's probably why. And some of my other interests, aside from magic, include Star Wars, Dungeons and Dragons, video games like Pokemon and The Legend of Zelda. I really love philosophy. I've also got a degree in music and theater, so those are also big things of mine, though not as much as the others. So now that you know a little bit more about me, let's talk about what this channel is going to be about. This channel is going to be mostly about magic, and that's magic with a K on the end, meaning real world magic. It's not quite like Harry Potter or Doctor Strange or Dragon Ball Z or anything like that. I can't shoot lightning out of my hands, as cool as that would be. Magic in this sense is a lot more about spreading your intention into the world to cause change. But I'll do a video over what magic really is in a later video. That way it doesn't bog up a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So the primary focus of this channel will be magic, of course, but because I have that ADHD brain tendency to just jump all over the place, I can't sit and focus on one thing for an extended amount of time or I lose interest. So this will also be a space for me to share my love for Star Wars and D&D and all of those things that I mentioned earlier. They will all probably pop up on this channel at some point. So if you like those things, but you're not quite into the magic side, do still stick around because I will get to those things eventually, I promise. And a big part of the nerd stuff and the magic stuff is going to be the philosophy behind certain things. I like to ask the question why a lot, at least internally. I really like to delve in and figure things out and break them down and then build them back up. So that's a big part of my practice and also just a big part of my daily life and the way I think. So expect to see that kind of thing on here as well. So a little bit about my personal practice as a witch. And yes, I did say witch. Even though my tag is a wizard, generically speaking, I'm just another witch. Witch is not a gender-specific term. If you practice magic, you're a witch. But even though I'm a witch, I still label myself as a wizard for a few different reasons. Mostly just because I kind of look like a wizard with the hair, the beard. I've been known to carry my staff around with me whenever I go out for walks and stuff. I can't wait for it to warm back up so I can get back out there and walk. And another reason is the fact that most of my favorite figures in mythology and history tend to be the archetypical wizard with the wide brim, the staff, the robe, and all of that stuff. So I just kind of lean into the archetype, as you can tell with all of this. And then one other reason, sorry, I had to go dig out of my bookshelf here, is actually this book by Deepak Chopra. It's called The Way of the Wizard. Deepak Chopra is a spiritualist, American Indian, who has written tons and tons of books on living a better and more realized life, and that's exactly what this book is about. But this one is particularly different because he approaches it from the standpoint of the mythology of Arthurian legend, specifically with Arthur being raised by Merlin. And throughout this whole book, he talks about how to recognize and live into the inner wizard in all of us. And the way that he describes the wizard as a spiritual path has always connected with me. So ever since I read this book, I knew that I was going to call myself a wizard whenever I started an online presence or anything like that. So it's purely personal preference, but when you should actually refer to me generically as just another witch. So beyond just the generic term, the most specific type of witch I am is a solitary eclectic witch. Solitary, of course, meaning that I practice alone. I don't have a coven or anything like that. I just practice by myself and learn by myself. Though I do have some other friends that practice other things, and even some people that I've taught that I still communicate with to figure out how they're doing things, and then we exchange that kind of thing. So I'm not totally alone, but my style is so unique that I tend to just be a solo practitioner. And part of the weirdness of my practice comes from the eclectic part. Being an eclectic witch means that I draw from a lot of different sources. So I take some inspirations from Druidry on their philosophy side of things with the earth, and draw from Celtic magic, which is actually not specific to Druidry, as I'm finding out through one of the books that I'm reading right now. I also draw on ideas and spell work, which is pretty new to me right now, from just generic witchcraft and Wicca. Most of my philosophical and energy work stuff comes from Eastern practices and philosophies like Taoism and Buddhism. I also draw on some psychic witchcraft stuff, which also stems out of some Jediism practices and meditations and philosophies. And my general upbringing and my exploration of the craft when I was younger is really more from a chaos sorcerer perspective. Chaos magic is basically just you figure it out as you go without any set amount of rules or anything like that. And you just feel your way through and figure out what works by trial and error. So I guess chaos witchery is probably the core of what I do. Like I was kind of hinting at, I've only recently started to dive into the more earthy and more ritualistic magics. Most of my upbringing was just a lot of energy work and chi and that kind of thing, which mostly stemmed out of martial arts and the inspirations I had to begin exploring magic, which I'll get into later when I talk about the history of how I got to where I am now. But yeah, the more earth-bound magics and the more ritualistic things of sigil work, incantations, and that kind of thing is all newer to me, but I'm really diving into that as much as I can right now. and I'm trying to amass a collection of books so that I can always have these kinds of things on hand to learn from. Because that's a big part of my personal practice, is learning from different traditions. Like I said, the eclectic part. It really is a huge part of my contemporary practice. But I also kind of adapt everything to what I already know, and most of my just innate style of magic that I fall back on when I just need to do something really quickly is something more along the lines of energy work. So most of my practice is based on meditation, chi collection and manipulation, heavy visualization, and even a bit of astral travel and projection kind of stuff. Though I don't astral project into other places on this physical world very well. It's mostly otherworld and spiritual multiverse travel. And I'll get more into that kind of thing in a later video, I think, where I explain my views on the multiverse theory and the spiritual realms and things like that. That's a little much for an intro video. But because most of my practice comes out of this energy work and that link with martial arts, a lot of my practice is very somatic. You'll notice I move my hands quite a bit when I talk and I start getting excited. That's just an innate part of my personality, so it extends into my magic, but that also comes from the way that I originally learned how to use magic and energy manipulation. So when I was younger, actually this is a good point for me to transition into my history with how I got started and then got to where I am now. I started practicing at the ripe age of 8, though I didn't quite know it at the time. I've always been told that I'm a bright thinker, so back at 8 years old, being raised in a Southern Baptist community, I was really, really interested in the more esoteric side of Christianity, miracle workings, and the wonderful, awesome stories of the things that people could do from the Old Testament, and then even in the New Testament, the stories both in the Bible and without of the disciples performing great feats. What I didn't realize was that my other interests at the time would bleed into developing the foundation of my practice. So while on one hand you've got this kid that's really interested in biblical stories and magic and that kind of thing, on the other side is anime. Yes, I got my my magical start with anime, no less. Specifically starting with Naruto, and their main focus is that everyone has chakra inside of them, and you can learn to release that chakra in what would be more traditional spell-like effects, like water dragons, breathing fire, walking on water, creating illusions, all that kind of stuff. So I really got into this, and they, instead of using words like incantations for Western magic, they use hand signs, different things, kind of like this kind of stuff. So me being absolutely obsessed, I learned the different sequences for different, what they call their magic jutsu, which is the release aspect of it. And so I learned the sequences for that kind of stuff, and what I eventually found was that I could actually start to feel things happen, feel my energy move around. And the crazy thing is I would have just written this off as pure imagination because I had hyperactive imaginative thoughts when I was younger. I would have written it off, but I found other people that also felt this same sensation at a Bible camp, no less. So early on, we kind of started figuring out our own kind of thing and sharing what we could with one another. So I guess I did have somewhat of a coven while I was growing up, just much more in the chaos magician side of things. And eventually we got to the point where we didn't require the hand signs. We could just do the finishing maneuver and produce the effect that we wanted. And this was further enhanced when I was really getting into martial arts, which I thereby linked with Avatar: The Last Airbender. And if you haven't seen that show, one, you should definitely go watch it. It's probably one of the best animated series I've seen in my life. And two, they use martial arts to bend the elements, to control them, pretty much. And I took that as a basis for energy manipulation myself. So now instead of just trying intent and then just doing a couple motions, if I wanted to stir up the energy within me and around me, I would move around. With all of that, I eventually just kind of created my own very unique style of chaos magic and pretty much just explored that for a long time. Then I got to college with undergrad, and that's where the world really opened up to me. I was no longer in a small southern town that was predominantly Christian, and you didn't know anyone of any other faith or practice, or at least you didn't know that you knew. And once I got to college, I was able to meet other practitioners of other styles and even adopt a few people as apprentices of sorts, because I would start talking about the philosophy of magic and that kind of thing. I've always kind of been able to get a sense for whether people have the gift. Anyone can learn magic, but there are some people that are more predisposed to being able to learn it. At least from my particular style, just because mine is a lot more feeling and intuitive based, which means that you have to have the right kind of mindset and attitude to really dive in the way that I do. But I was able to find some people like that, and I was able to work with them to help them realize their potential, and then those are the people that I talk with now, figuring out different ways of doing things. But I also met some druids, some Wiccans, people that just kind of dabbled in tarot and runes and things like that. And through these people, I was able to start exploring other practices and start adapting what I learned from them to my own personal practice. And so that's kind of led to now where I'm using candles and an altar. And if you keep up with my TikTok, you'll actually recognize that just yesterday I picked up a cauldron. Well, yesterday as of filming this video. And I'm starting to explore all kinds of other styles and traditions. I'm also currently reading a book called Celtic Magic by Christopher Hughes. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to go on to a book on Druidry by Pennington. It's over on my desk somewhere. So, but I'll find out exactly which book it is, and I'll link both of those down below. And once I'm done with that, I'm probably going to go back to Aidan Wachter's book, which I started a few months ago before the craziness of the holidays took over my work schedule. And I'll probably go back to that too, because it has a lot of baseline practices for that kind of thing. And on top of that, I'm also going to be starting work on a grimoire, That way I have somewhere to write down uh, all of these new styles and ideas of magic, so that I have them in a very condensed, personalized format. And that's what I like a grimoire for. So I guess it's technically more of a book of shadows, but I'm not really recording my thoughts and experiences as much as I am just recording information and specific spells. Probably also going to have a section on sigils and that kind of thing too. So I'm also going to be documenting it throughout the process. So I'll have some of the bigger developments here on YouTube probably, but some of the more minor things will either be on my Instagram or my TikTok, both of which are linked in this channel's About page, so go give me a follow there too. But with that, I think that covers most everything about me and what I want to do with this channel. So go ahead and like this video and subscribe if you want to keep up with me and my rambling shenanigans as I explore different traditions and develop not only my practice but myself as I go. So feel free to tag along, and thanks for watching.